My boyfriend was under my bed, and I had to listen to it eat him all night. I have a kill switch for my nightmares. It's my one secret power, my escape hatch. Most people just ride the wave, tossed around by whatever their sleeping brain decides to throw at them. Not me. The second things get wrong, the second the wasps start crawling under my skin or the trees in the woods grow eyes, I can feel it. The logic center in my brain kicks in, screaming that none of it is real. That's my cue. I clench my fists, tighten every muscle until my bones ache, and trigger a fall. That sharp, jerking sensation yanks me right back into the real world, my heart hammering against my ribs, safe in my bed. I tried it. I balled my fists so hard my nails dug bloody crescents into my palms. I tensed my body until I thought my spine would snap. I braced for the fall. Nothing. I tried again, and again. For what felt like hours, I slammed my finger on the escape button. But the cord was cut. I was locked in. When my mind finally surrendered, accepting the horrifying truth that this was no dream, I risked a movement. I had to know the time. My only light came from the faint red pulse of my alarm clock, a sliver of hallway light beneath my door, and the silent, ghostly flashes of lightning that periodically bleached the world outside my window. I propped myself up on one elbow, my body screaming with a tension that had nowhere to go. That's when I felt it. A heavy, living pressure shifted beneath me, pushing up through the mattress. It was a slow, deliberate movement, like a great snake coiling in its den. A cold dread, colder than any winter night, seeped into my bones, freezing me in place. This is it. My last coherent thought. I'm going to die here. The clock blinked its indifferent message, 2:45. I didn't know if that was the real time, or just the moment the power had decided to return from the storm. It didn't matter. For all intents and purposes, my time of death would be listed as unknown. Something tugged at the bottom of my bed. The movement was so sharp it threw me flat on my back. My hands flew out, gripping the fabric of my fitted sheet as the heavy duvet began to slide, pulled by an unseen force. If I'd been tangled in it, I would have been dragged down like a fish in a net. Pulled right off the bed, right into the darkness where Kaylin had gone. The blanket slid over the right side of the bed, the side facing the window, and vanished into the shadows below. The pulling stopped. Then, a new pressure, a snag against my left thigh. A corner of the top sheet must have gotten twisted and pinned under my leg when I fell back. The thing pulled again, a short, impatient jerk. Then another, harder this time. I tried to lift my hip to free the fabric, but the slightest shift of my weight to the right seemed to agitate it more. A sound rose from the abyss beneath me. A thin, keening shriek that bypassed my ears and drilled straight into my skull, like a siren made of scraping metal and animal pain. My entire body locked up. I stared at the textured plaster of my ceiling as a high-pitched ring blotted out the sound of the rain. A small, insane part of my brain thanked God that at least this time the scream was quieter. The weight shifted again. The heavy mass that had been pressed against the underside of the mattress slithered away, moving with a dreadful smoothness. Through the fading ringing in my ears, I could hear a wet, dragging sound, inching its way toward the right side of my bed. Toward the dark, wet stain that was still spreading on my floorboards. I forced myself to turn my head just a fraction. A hand was rising from the floor. For one wild, beautiful second, my heart leaped. Kaylin. He's alive. He's pulling himself up. It was just a nasty fall. The hope was a warm, brilliant sun in the frozen landscape of my terror. And then the hand rose higher and the sun went out. Even in the strobing, uncertain light, I could see it wasn't right. It had the general shape of a hand, 5 long digits branching from a single point. But it was all wrong. A human hand has a thumb set lower, an anchor of asymmetry that tells you if it's left or right. This hand was perfectly, horribly symmetrical. 2 opposing thumbs, or maybe no thumbs at all. Just 5 identical fingers, arranged like a starfish. It moved toward me, the digits spreading wide like the legs of some pale, colossal spider. The arm it was attached to followed, rising past where an elbow should have been. But there was no joint, no wrist, no elbow, no shoulder. Just a single, continuous limb that moved like a serpent, impossibly long, gliding through the air as if it were water. Warm, foul-smelling drops of liquid pattered onto my floor as it hovered, positioning itself directly above my body. The hand descended. I sucked in my stomach, trying to make myself smaller, trying to shrink away from the inevitable touch. It brushed against the thin sheet covering me, and its grip closed. The nail of the central finger, a shard of what looked like obsidian, scraped slowly across my abdomen. A scream was building in my throat, a physical thing I had to swallow back down, terrified of what any sound might provoke. A line of fire traced its path across my skin, a white-hot agony, as if I were being branded. A thin ribbon of my own blood began to well up, soaking into the sheet. The creature didn't seem to notice or care. It was focused on the sheet, pulling it away. I managed to lift my side just enough, and with a final gentle tug, it pulled the last of my coverings away, leaving me exposed on the bed. A tremendous fork of lightning split the sky, illuminating my room in stark, brutal detail. For a second, I saw the thing clearly. Its skin wasn't skin at all, but a canvas of ashen, overlapping scales, like a reptile. But it was streaked and spattered with crimson. The entire hand, from the dark talons to the coiling arm, was slick and dripping with Kaelin's blood. The light vanished, swallowed by a deafening roar of thunder that shook the house to its foundations. At the sound, the creature writhed, a violent, spasmodic jerk. It snatched the last sheet from my bed and yanked it down to the floor with incredible speed. I was left alone on the bare mattress with nothing but my pillows and a faint pinkish trail where Kaelin's blood had soaked through to meet my own. I felt the demon. What else could it be? Stir beneath me again as the thunder rolled away into the distance. That night was the longest of my life. A single, unending moment of terror. Our phones were still in the basement, charging where we'd left them. Even if I could reach them, my parents were hours away. Outside my door, I could hear Clover, my cat, occasionally scratching and letting out a soft, questioning whimper. She was hungry. She needed to be let out. The thought of her simple, normal needs was a form of torture. She was on the shore of the real world, and I was adrift in the middle of a black ocean, trapped on a tiny raft. The slightest movement, a hand dipped over the edge, felt like it would invite the leviathan below to drag me down into the depths. Every time Clover whimpered, the thing beneath me would shift, a low growl vibrating through the mattress, but it never fully surfaced again. "Why don't you just finish it?" The thought echoed in the silent spaces between my panicked breaths. "You can come up here whenever you want. Just get it over with." The only answer was a sudden, sickeningly loud snap from beneath the bed. It was followed by a series of slow, wet, rhythmic sounds. Smacking. Tearing. I cramped my hands over my mouth to stifle a sob, hot tears streaming down my temples and into my hair. Kaelin's body was being dragged, repositioned. The smell that wafted up was indescribable, a thick, coppery stench of the slaughterhouse mixed with something else, something ancient and wrong. That sound, the sharp crack of a large bone breaking, hit me harder than any bolt of lightning ever could. I almost wished I could hear him struggling, fighting back. At least then I'd know his last moments weren't just this consumption. But there was no struggle. There was only the beast and its meal, the grisly percussion only pausing when the sky roared with another clap of thunder. The sun must have risen, but it brought no comfort. The storm clouds were a bruised purple blanket smothering the world, and the rain continued its relentless assault. At least now, there was a dim grey light. I could see the floor by my window. It was a swamp, A glistening mixture of rainwater and other fluids I prayed I would never be able to identify. The thing was still moving under me, rearranging things. The corners of my dust ruffle would occasionally kick out, giving me a glimpse of the carnage. Its meal was finished. Now it was making a nest. I tried to shift my weight just an inch. It didn't react as strongly as before, but the low, guttural beginnings of its siren wail froze me solid. It had no reason to let me live. If this thing was an animal, then I was just the next meal, being saved for later, once it had digested its last one. "I'm so sorry, Kaylin. I'm so sorry I told you to come here." The words were a silent prayer in my mind. At least you're not hurting anymore. You don't deserve any of this. I tried to picture him in heaven, walking through those pearly gates my dad always talked about. I had to believe that's where he was. He deserved paradise. The storm was getting worse. The lightning was closer now, the thunder instantaneous and violent. The monster under the bed kicked something with a sudden, agitated twitch. It skittered out from under the bedskirt, smacked against the wall, and landed with a wet splash in the vile puddle by my window. It was an arm. An arm from the elbow down. Strips of flesh were torn away, exposing the splintered, gleaming white of the radius and ulna. And, at the end of it, a hand. 5 fingers. A thumb, set lower to the side. The right hand. The hand that had held mine just hours ago, the hand that had gently brushed a stray piece of hair from my face. Now it was just leftovers. A piece of scrap. This was my fault. All of it. This was what I deserved. My dad's voice echoed in my head, pulled from a memory of a sermon years ago. He was a pastor, and he always said the good news of the gospel was that God did all the hard work. Our only part in our own salvation was the sin that made it necessary. He preached about a patient, loving God who didn't treat us as our sins deserved, who always offered a second chance. But then there was Ananias and Sapphira. Be careful and sincere with your promises. Dad's voice, his special preacher voice, resonated in my memory. God never changes. The same God who destroyed the world in the flood, who rained fire on Sodom and Gomorrah, that's the New Testament God too. Visions of fire and water and blinding holy light filled my mind. Pain. The kind of judgment reserved for the selfish, the lustful, the proud, for the liars. A checklist that now described me perfectly. Remember Ananias and Sapphira? His voice grew lower, more serious. A husband and wife who lied to the Holy Spirit. They promised to give everything they had from selling a field, and they sold it, and they brought the money to the apostles. He'd always pause there for dramatic effect. And do you know what happened? Dead. Both of them. Dropped right there on the floor. They got one chance to tell the truth. Just one. And they didn't take it. He'd sighed then, and I could have sworn his eyes found mine in the crowded sanctuary. We all get second chances, he'd said. But that doesn't mean we always get one more. One day, God's going to give you your last shot, and you won't even know it's the last one. Thunder exploded directly overhead, and the beast beneath me flailed wildly. I didn't know what it was. A mutated animal, a waking hallucination, a demon crawled up from some forgotten pit. But as the lightning split the sky, it felt like my dad's Old Testament God was standing right outside my window, ready to collect. During a brief lull in the storm, the impossible arm snaked out again, reaching for the severed limb on the floor. It moved slowly, cautiously, like a child trying to steal a cookie without being seen. Another flash of lightning, another deafening crack of thunder, and it recoiled, pulling back empty-handed. I thanked God for that small mercy. It wouldn't get to have all of him. "I'm sorry," I prayed, my eyes squeezed shut. "Please, Father, just take him home. He's with you. I know he is. Just please make this stop. It wasn't fair. It was all my fault. Kaylin should have been miles from here, safe in his own bed. He was supposed to pick me up this morning. But I was the one who told him to come over. He'd only given me a quick kiss goodnight, but I was the one who pulled him in for more. He could have slept on the couch downstairs, but I was the one who insisted he come up to my room. He only opened the window because he knew how much I loved the sound of the rain. He did everything for me, and I got him killed. Please, I begged the ceiling, the storm, God himself, just kill me too. I thought my prayer was being answered. That siren sound began again, rising in pitch and intensity. The thing beneath me was churning, stirring with a new and terrifying energy. This was it. One moment I'd be here, the next I wouldn't. I'd never get to tell my parents how sorry I was for lying. I'd never get to face Kaylin's family and tell them I was the reason their son was dead. I'd never get to tell Kaylin himself how sorry I was for everything. It took me a second to realize the sound wasn't just coming from under the bed. It was louder now, and it was coming from outside. A deeper, more mechanical wail was weaving itself into the creature's shriek. The rain turned to hail, and chunks of ice began to shatter against the house, spraying through the open window, stinging my exposed skin. I looked toward the window and saw it. The sky was no longer grey, but a churning, sickly, bruised green. Trees of lightning spiderwebbed across it, illuminating the impossible. A funnel cloud. A black, writhing finger touching down at the edge of our field. The demon beneath me screamed its challenge to the tornado sirens now blaring across the county. One way or another, my judgment had arrived. My punishment was going to be death. I just didn't know which monster would get to me first.